Welcome to our show today, everyone. What if I were to say something to you like, all suffering comes from not accepting what is? It's really something to think about, but that's what we're going to talk about today. And for those of you who don't know me, I am Cheryl Piper, CherylPiper.com, and this is live with CherylPiper.com. And just kind of let me know that you're out there. That's always great. Give me some likes, some wows. Any comments, just put in the comment box, and I can see them. I'm not actually able to reply to them until I go into Facebook after the broadcast, but I will reply, and I appreciate all your comments and any questions that you have that maybe we can lead this conversation. I appreciate that. So we are going to go ahead and get started. I thought of this the other day, and I thought, well, it would be really nice if we talked about acceptance and willingness, because these two things are so important. And I was trying to think of the best way to bring it about, to discuss it. And I thought, well, this is something that I do say a lot, and it's kind of on my website in different areas about this suffering that we go into, and some people can stay in for years or even a lifetime. And one thing that I think of too is like the serenity prayer, and that kind of leads into what we're talking about today. I actually have that hanging on my wall in my living room. And for those of you, I'm going to wing it here, but I'm pretty sure I know it. It is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the strength to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so that really is a powerful few lines there. I know that serenity prayer is much bigger. That's the most popular part of it. But those lines are very powerful, because when we think about, being able to accept the things that we can't change and having the strength to change the things that we can, I think a lot about, I know I kind of led this off when I did the little promo of talking about the 7 stages of grief, and the last one being acceptance. And so, those 7 stages of grief are denial, and then stepping into a pain and fear. And then we move into anger and bargaining and guilt and depression, and then finally into acceptance. And I thought about breaking those down and talking about those a little bit. Oh my goodness, to talk about all of that, I could be here for hours. And I am actually doing a talk. Check on my Facebook page at Cheryl Piper Sends Love, because I don't remember the exact name, but it is a Franklin County Women's Conference that's happening March the 10th off the top of my head. And I was asked to be one of the speakers. And the subject that I'm talking about is called, what's next, or what now, and dealing with, what do we do in dealing with divorce, in dealing with a job loss, in dealing with, just these situations that happen in our life that catch us by surprise sometimes, and kind of pull the rug out from under us, and can cause us to go into these stages. And then, of course, moving into that stage of acceptance. And I talked about this a little bit. I think maybe the first few times we talked, I kind of brought up this hindsight moment, because it falls right into this space. And I'm going to start off talking about that, and we'll talk about willingness and acceptance, and then bring it back around to that hindsight moment again. Because when we think about a hindsight moment, it's kind of when we've passed through a situation and we're able to almost look back on it as the observer and say, wow, I can see why that happened, or that makes sense. And so in moving through this discussion today, that's really going to play a part in what we're talking about. Because the more that we can shorten that hindsight moment, the less pain and disappointment that we're actually in when we're moving through this process. So again, I wanted to put this up, and I forgot at the beginning, but please share this out on your feed, on your Facebook feed, because, if you're thinking of someone in your mind right now that you're thinking, wow, they could really use this, share it out, send a message to them, let them know to tune in, because, as I do with most of my shows, I talk for about 15, 20 minutes, and that's it. I try to keep it brief and picking new subjects each time. So please share out to anyone that you can think of. So acceptance and willingness. Okay, so looking at denial. So denial, and what, I'm going to use kind of an example of when I went through my divorce, because that was a rug ripped right out from under me moment. So in looking at that and looking at these stages, I do agree. I was in that state of denial. I thought, just kind of going about my normal routine and going about life and just really thinking that this isn't happening. This isn't really going on. And then, once I kind of moved into that next stage of that pain and that fear taking over, because I'm thinking, wow, this is happening. And so you really, go into that amygdala hijack. For those of you who haven't seen me speak before, I talk about this a lot. And this is a space where the amygdala is part of our brain. It's part of the limbic system. And when we're in a fearful space, it takes over and tries to protect us. And so in moving into this next stage where we kind of are in fear and in pain, and I remember this stage so well. I lived in Salt Lake City, and I am from the East Coast and lived in Salt Lake City, just raising our son there. Basically, pretty much our whole marriage happened there. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, I am sitting in the middle of Utah and I'm alone, and I'm going through a divorce, and it was a panic, fearful moment for me to realize. And this stage was very, very powerful. But one thing I did in this stage that, and I really do think it was in this stage, was I made a decision that I'm not going to be a victim of this. I am going to move through this, however long it takes, however painful it is. I am going to move through this with dignity and grace and get to the other side. And so, and I'm actually having a moment right now and thinking about that probably was that space where I made that decision. The next stage, of course, being anger. And, we go through this, we can be angry with, our spouse for, disappointing us. This was the person we trusted the most. We could, be angry with friends. We can feel like that people are angry with us. Our children can be angry with us, blaming us for, not being able to hold it together. So there's a lot going on in this stage. And a lot of times things can be said that, boy, you just don't mean. And again, throwing people into an amygdala hijack, or you being thrown into that fearful space because someone's saying and lashing out at you and being angry. So a lot of times people get stuck in this stage. I can say that there's people that I know and people that I've talked to throughout the years, and it can get stuck in this anger stage, and you can get stuck in wanting to be right, and feeling justified for your anger. But none of that is helping you. None of that is helping you to accept and to step into acceptance. And that's why I use that term, willingness to step into acceptance, because we have to be willing. We have to be willing to walk through these stages and get to the acceptance space. Because if we don't allow ourselves to be willing, we can easily stay stuck in these. I just thought this was a great way to talk about this, bringing the 7 stages of grief up. And then, of course, moving to bargaining. This is the stage where you just think, and I remember this stage too. I just thought, wow, there's got to be something that can be done here. This can't just be all thrown away. We've got to be able to figure this out, and just trying to bargain in that stage, not really realizing that there was no bargaining to happen. And I was, again, putting myself into a space of suffering. Let's bring it back to that very first statement that I had. Our suffering has a lot to do with our willingness to accept what is. And when we're in some of these stages and we're simply suffering because we're not willing to accept. So next stage being guilt. And this is the one where, if you're the person who's caused the divorce, and I'm just picking divorce, it could be job loss, it could be anything that, creates these situations of needing to move through stages of something to step into acceptance. This one was good for me to talk about, and I wanted to share more of my life with you. And so, of course, guilt, it could be, perhaps you're the person who has created the situation for divorce. On my end, it was, I wasn't that. I was the person who, was asked, to have a divorce. And, but you still feel that guilt. You feel like, wow, maybe there was something I could have done. Could I have done this different? Could I have done that different? And if I had done that, would, maybe things be okay? And maybe this wouldn't have happened. And these are these, situations of guilt. And once again, stirring around in this space, stirring around in this lower level energy is very, very heavy and puts a lot of weight on you. It's not helping you to move into the space where you can move on with your life and release into acceptance. So, and then of course, the next stage being depression. I can remember feeling like, wow, I just don't know if I can get out of bed. It was very hard. And, this is a space where maybe you don't eat, or maybe you overeat, or, you're tired, you're exhausted, and maybe you're doing nothing but sleeping, but you're still tired and exhausted. So I understand this. And this is that space where I said to myself, you have to walk through this. I know it feels very dark. I know this is what you're deeming to be the worst thing that's ever happened to you. But you must walk through. There is light on the other side of this tunnel. I know you can't see it, but it's there. And you got to keep walking. And that's what I did, because I was determined to not be a victim of this situation, create myself into a victim mentality, which would have just kept me stuck. And so moving forward into acceptance, and I have to tell you, when that moment happened, and this can take a while. This is a process. But when that moment happened, I felt so light. I felt like this weight had just been lifted from me, that I felt like I could almost float, because I just felt so light, and all of that heavy energy that I had been dragging around with me and pulling around with me, it was just gone. It was a shift. And when that energy shifts, because we're willing to step into acceptance, it really is like stepping into the magic. It's the only way I can describe it. But it's not magic. It's who we really are. This is who we really are. We are that light person. We are that person who feels lighthearted and feels joy and feels peace. And when we can step into acceptance, we can move into that moment. It's when we're trying to change someone. It's when we're trying to control other people. Those are the things that create suffering. I come back to that statement again. All suffering comes from just that not accepting what is and trying somehow to control the situation, control another person. We can't control anyone else. We can't make them love us. We can't make them think things that we want them to think. We can't make them do things that we want them to do. We can only control ourselves. And that illusion that we step into of thinking that we can control someone else, it really keeps us trapped. It keeps us in a state of suffering. So being able to move into acceptance and being willing to allow yourself, because that's a big word right there that I use a lot, is allow. Just allowing it to happen, allowing yourself to move into, instead of trying to fight against something or trying to push it and trying to make it happen and pushing and I will talk with people and they'll say, well, I'm trying and nothing's happening. And, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I'm like, just stop, breathe, and allow yourself to have the thought of moving into that acceptance moment. Because we can't fight and push our way into acceptance. It just doesn't work that way. It's a release. It's a surrender of allowing it to happen and allowing ourselves to move into it. And wow, I really appreciate this, being able to share all of this with you guys, because this all just kind of came out of me, and I hope it was helpful. I know that we're kind of around the time that I like to wrap it up, and I'm hoping that you can see what we were talking about in the beginning of that hindsight moment, because the shorter we can keep that hindsight moment where things seem clear, you know how things are always clear when you're in hindsight. It's like, oh yeah, I get it now. But the longer that hindsight moment is from the original situation happening, the more suffering that is in that space between the hindsight moment and the event that happened. The shorter the time is between the event that happened and the hindsight moment, the less suffering that we have. So I'm hoping that made sense, and I'm hoping that it helped with anything that you may be going through. Again, continue commenting if you're catching this not in the live broadcast and you're catching it on the rebroadcast. Please comment. I'd love to hear from you. I'm here. I will answer you. I will respond. And we're going to wrap this up. And again, you can reach me at CherylPiper.com. That's my website. There's lots of information there. I have 2 courses there. One of them is specifically talking about forgiveness and finding that freedom and peace in forgiveness. That's specifically designed for that. And the show that's coming up Monday, I haven't chosen a topic yet. So, you know what? I'm throwing it out to you guys. If there's something that you'd like me to focus on, put it in the comment box and let me know what you're thinking. Because I'm doing this for you guys. I'm doing it for everyone. I just want to help because I really, really believe that that is my purpose here. And the situations that I have moved through are to help others to move through as well. Again, my purpose is really to help you discover and let go of the things that are holding you back. That's it. That's what I do. So again, I'm Cheryl Piper, CherylPiper.com, and I look forward to seeing you guys on Monday at our next broadcast. And again, put some stuff in the comment box. Let me know what you'd like me to talk about. And it gives me ideas for subjects that you have interest in. Take care.